It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Shamil Radia, all the way from Ontario, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, the capital of Canada. He's with the technology he has is Busy360 Dental, and his website's thatsmilingdentist.com. I want to start with a little trivia, though. People don't realize this about Canada. 2 stats about Canada. If you're in dentistry, Canada and California are about identical in everything. Population, GDP, number of dentists. But Canada's 2 largest cities, Toronto and Montreal, and where he's at in Ottawa, is actually south of Seattle. The stats I'm reading is that 90% of the Canadian population lives within 100 miles of the U.S. border.
U.S. border, yeah.
And a huge chunk of that population is actually south of Seattle. And you don't realize this until you go to Detroit. And you realize that when you go to Detroit, if you drive south of Detroit, you cross into Canada. You drive east, you cross into Canada. North, you drive into Canada. But so how's old Canada today? It's actually 114 degrees today. What is it in Ottawa?
Well, I believe the reason why is because the line kept going further south when we lost that war. So when the line kept going further south, as the colder it got. So it's pretty cold up here in Ottawa in those winter months. So I can imagine that's why some of the Americans decided to stay down there.
What's your temperature there right now?
Oh, you know what, we've had an incredibly hot summer this year. You know, we're actually probably close to Phoenix weather this year, right? We've been in the 40s. So for us in Celsius, I guess it's in the 40s, which would be in the hundreds for your late, high 90s and low hundreds sort of thing.
Really? Wow.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. But about 6 months ago, Howard, it was minus 40, right? Yeah, what's that in Fahrenheit?
Ottawa, Canada. Oh, right now, it says right this moment, it's 98 degrees in Phoenix and 72 degrees in Ottawa. So you're a good 26 degrees cooler. In
26 degrees.
Fahrenheit.
And it's a cold, rainy day today, Howard. So earlier it was nice and beautiful. You got to wait about 20 minutes in Ottawa and you'll see rain, right? So this year we've been really lucky, but yeah, I was looking at the weather in Vegas, which I'll be in about a week with the family. And I noticed that, there's no rain. There's 0% chance of rain and just 0%. There's not even zero.
Well, the reason I asked you to be on the show, and you didn't ask me to be on the show, the reason I asked you to be on the show is, I'm a dentist. I get dentists. I love dentists. They want to do root canals, fillings, crowns. They 100% of dentists are surgeons. They do surgery with their hand, whereas MDs, not even 10% do surgeries.
Right.
And they just want to take courses on dentistry. And you,
right.
I wanted you to come on there because as being a leader, I want to try to spoon feed the dentists things they don't want to listen to. And you talk a lot about the funnel. And that's why I love listening to you, the funnel. I mean, you ask a dentist, how many people land on your website in a month? They don't know. For every 100 people that land on your website, how many convert and call your office? They don't know. How many people, if 100 people call your office, how many do you convert to a scheduled appointment? I don't know. If 100 people came in with one cavity that you could diagnose on an x-ray, what percent get a filling? I don't know. And then I say, well, what questions do you have? They go, Howard, what bonding agent do you recommend? Oh, I don't know. There's only like 10 of them that work perfectly. Yeah. My whole answer on technology is if they sell $1 billion a year of it to dentists, I'm sure it works. I mean, dentists are
right.
They're paralysis by analysis. They make decisions the speed of a snail. And by God, if you can get dentists with 8 years of college to buy your product to the tune of $1 billion a year, that freaking works. Now let's focus on the funnel. In fact, when I ask a dentist, what is a funnel? They don't even know what I'm talking about. So right. I want you to start a rant. What is a funnel? What is your Busy360 dental technology? And what are my homies going to find at that smilingdentist.com website of yours?
Right. So a brilliant question, right? It's one of the biggest questions we answer daily, right? And so a funnel really is, taking a cold eyeball and bringing it through a specific, predictable, and consistent process that gives you your desired outcome at the very end, right? And so in dentistry, right, it's taking, the person who's scrolling through, and at that point, you know that they've been thinking about doing something. Everyone's out there. That's why dentists are popping up every single day. It's very easy to get a loan to become a dentist, right? I mean, it's very easy to just go walk in and get $1 million with a degree, right? I mean, in my small town, there's like 45, 50 dentists serving like less than probably 70,000 people, right? 60,000 people. I mean, and that's probably being conservative. So at the end of the day, they're all doing the same thing when they try and bring the person or that patient into the practice. But really, it's about what steps are you putting that person through in order to get them that desired outcome. And really, funnels now, and the sort of concept of funnels now is really spoken to from a digital perspective. Right, so if we just pull this kind of to the education, around exactly where funnels are used and what concepts of funnels are. Originally, there were sales funnels, right? So a person gets hired into a sales job, you're a business, you're a tech startup, and you hire a bunch of salespeople, and their job is to build a sales funnel, right? And that is, you're taking people who were probably in that discovery phase, and you're moving them through a specific phase to get them to buy something from you, right? In the dentist world, they spend too much time just basically trying to sell something to somebody without actually putting them through that step process first. And it's similar to I guess the dating game, right? Before we were married, you didn't just ask somebody, walk up to somebody on the street and ask them to marry you, right? It's just not the way stuff works, right? That's not how you do it. Everyone right now is trying to go from, you've discovered who I am and I'm a dentist and I'm really good, to I'm going to sell you something like a crown or an implant right away, right? So the thing with a funnel is what we try and do is we try to automate the build of that value to make the sales cycle shorter on the back end, right? So that they can do more cosmetic implant, higher margin cases. And we always tell dentists, what are you focusing on? What are you doing more of right now, right? As you know it, I mean, they're just reacting every single day. They're just reacting like crazy to cases, and a lot of them are general cases. I mean, we had one dentist who bought a second practice, right, because he wanted to scale, and he's back doing general clinical services, right, when before he was doing full reconstructive surgery 3 days a week, right, and he had 4 days a week off, 5 days a week off in a row, and his staff was happy. They were working 3 days a week. All he was doing is reconstructive surgery. Well, he decided to buy a second practice. So was the desired outcome to buy a second practice? Right? Was it really? Because for a lot of people, the desired outcome is to work harder, right? And my desired outcome and Dwight's desired outcome when we founded this company, was to not work more hours. It was to actually spend more time in our lives with our family and doing things that we love. And I'm able to do that now, right? I build funnels. All this stuff that we've done is a result of complete failure for years, right? And building stuff and finding out the gem, what works. Right, and that one, specific. Okay, we found it, great, and we're in cybersecurity for this 14 years, and we hit this one thing, and then I've invested in a ton of domains. I'm a crazy domainer. I buy a lot of domains. It's just one of those things I do on the side. So I have 350 domains, and I'll just build little kind of news article sites and see what works and see what doesn't. And that whole time we were just building a system, right, that people could replicate in order to automate their time so that they could spend more time on what really matters, and that's selling, and that's and solving problems, right? So for an all-on-4 patient, for instance, right, that cliche term all-on-4, which we know is a 5, 6, or 7 full reconstructive, whatever you want to call it, right? That patient that's worth over $35,000, they're much different than the patient, obviously, that just wants to get a cleaning, right? They're not even close. So when the receptionist answers the phone, there's no difference between the way the receptionist is answering the phone, right? So with the full reconstructive patient, they may have taken almost 2 years, I'm getting ahead of it. 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or perhaps even 2 years, right, to make that decision to even just call into the practice and get this taken care of, right? They've been through all sorts of research. The person's done, their homework on the dentist, and they picked up the phone, they've called, and, the receptionist had a bad barista at Starbucks that morning, right? And pissed, and it's their second call, and it was a Monday morning, and, they're just toned slightly off, right? And that $40,000 patient's gone. It's over, right? There is no, but if they were just calling to get a clean, it's a much different story, right? And so the funnel, and what we do with the funnel is we say, all right, it doesn't matter what you have, right? It doesn't matter, all the eyeballs are going to be cold. They're all going to be the same, right? And they're all going to be like something where you can, determine, this is a cold eyeball. I know this is a cold eyeball, but I'm a dentist and I want to sell them something, right? I want to sell them a crown or an implant or some sort of high margin service, but I know I've got to like give away free teeth whitening or something like that. What we aim to do is take away that concept, right, and automate those early steps in their sales cycle. Okay, so funnel is basically essentially it's in the dental world it's 3 or 4 core steps. It's very simple, right? So problem, right, the way people are doing it right now is they'll send, say, their ad or their traffic directly to their contact page. Okay, so I'm a dentist. I'm going to do implants for like $5,000 or $4,000. Call me, and it's sent directly to their implant page. Okay, or their contact page. What they're not doing in between there is offering any sort of value, right? They're offering absolutely no value to that patient or that person in return for what they're spending and what they're investing. And that's what causes a lot of apathy in this market, right? Is people get really pissed because they're like, oh, well, marketing is a scam. Advertising is a scam, and my sales process is great. I convert all sorts of people. I have no problem with my sales process. Yet I'm stagnant year to year in growth, right? I have no predictable way to actually generate a volume of leads that I can fail with or succeed with. And even if I'm absolutely terrible at sales and I have like 1,000 leads come in, I'm going to close at least 1 or 2 of those, and I'm going to make up my money, right? And so with the funnel, what we do is step 1, okay, very, very early step, what we call the lead magnet. Right, it's why they're actually, going to click on that particular button in the first place. Right.
That's called the lead what?
It's called the lead magnet.
Okay, the lead magnet.
And so Ryan Dice and Russell Brunson, the guys, huge leaders in this business, they talk about this a lot, right? They're sort of defining some of these steps for years, and really it's human behavior. It's always been human behavior. It hasn't been any different from back in the day when we were buying Columbia House records, right, or tapes when we were ordering them for 1 cent. It was the exact same funnel. So the core first step is called the lead magnet. Right, and that is in our world, it's a display ad, right? So somebody that's scrolling through the news or they're scrolling through a specific publication or what have you, and and they click on something to download. In the dentist case, a guide to dental implants, right? And that's essentially all it is. We're not pitching the dentist whatsoever. They're just downloading. We're just asking them to download a guide, all right? Which takes them to step 2, which is what we call the micro commitment. Right, some sort of micro commitment or a tripwire. Now, what generally dentists are doing right now is they're giving away like free teeth whitening in order for somebody to come and become a general patient, right? And that just leads to more free. The person comes in, gets their teeth whitening, and then they go off and get the next free teeth whitening, right? And then when they really need some dental work done, they go and they look for that dentist, right? So free leads to more free. And so what we wanted to do was establish something in that second step that doesn't cost dentists any money at all, right? And that's a guide. So, I mean, you didn't become a doctor, as you know it, Howard. I mean, you're a doctor. You spent years just writing lots of stuff, right? God, you guys could write books, but people don't realize how much they can actually write. When I ask a dentist, hey, can you write about this procedure? They just clam up. They have writer's block. They can't do it. Just write raw, right? Just go out there and write stuff about a procedure to help people. You're already talking about it on a daily basis. Just get out there and develop some content for yourself, right? Don't have it be the exact same content that everybody else is writing. That's just defined, as, what's under the hood, right? I don't care how the car is built. I care that the Ferrari's there. That's what I want to buy, right? I don't really care what engine or how they built the car. And nobody's asking you about that, right? What they're asking you about is, how much does it cost? Can I afford it? And is it going to make me look better, right? And so at the end of the day, in step 2, what you're trying to do is you're trying to establish authority for that dentist, right? You're trying to establish, authority and some sort of value for that dentist while they sleep, right? And so the best part about step 1 and step 2 is all this is automatic, right? None of this kind of stuff that they're doing is stuff that they actually have to spend manual time doing. Right, these are leads that are actually generated and stuff that interest that's generated in themselves and their practice, right, automatically, right, while they sleep or while they're working on other cases. So second step is what we call that micro commitment or that tripwire, right? Ryan Dice calls it a tripwire. People call it different stuff, but tripwire is kind of that micro commitment second step, and that's generally a landing page that asks them to download the guide, right? So step 3 in our world, right, is the consultation form at that point. So they've downloaded the guide, they've seen how the dentist can help them. They've seen that they've written a comprehensive 35-page guide, lots of pictures. It's going to show them the outcome of their surgery and so on and so forth. And step 3 is, do you want to come in and see me, right? So rather than send them from, which everyone's doing right now, step 1, which is, here I am, I'm a dentist, and I'm new in town, and there's like 60 around me. There's actually 4 just underneath my practice, and I decided to open up just above them, but you got to come see me over anybody else. So I'm going to send you and spend like 10 grand a month sending you directly to my contact page. And I'm going to have no idea how to measure that, right? And that's exactly what they're doing. It sounds nuts. That's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing right now. So what we try and do is we try and take them from step 1, which is your lead magnet, step 2, which is making a micro commitment. And the power of that micro commitment of giving them that email address in return for that guide, that download, right, is in their mind, they've made some sort of background commitment in their mind, right? Which what people don't realize, if they're not, if they haven't been through like thousands of different sales calls and different sales cycles, is the smallest little things at the very start of the sales cycle affect the largest decision at the very end, right? So, in this case, I've made a micro commitment to this dentist to download their guide, and if the guide's informative enough, it's going to make me a lot easier to buy something from you in the future. Like Howard, if someone watched you and you talk about your podcast and patients are watching, there's probably people flying in from all over the world who want to see Howard, right? There's a reason why they do that, right? There's a reason why people fly in from all over the world to see specific dentists. They have dentists in their own town, right? There isn't a reason for them to do that. And a lot of it, what we try and eliminate, especially through the building of the funnel, is you're eliminating a few major things. You're eliminating the manual time that you spend trying to sell people things, right? And you automate what you can make your profit on because you're able to measure that much, much easier, right? You're able to take metrics that are online and say, okay, well, in step 1, X number of people clicked on this ad. Step 2, X number of people downloaded the guide. And in step 3, X number of people filled out the consultation form, right? Now, it doesn't end in step 3. There's 2 more really critical key steps to this, right? And in fact, it gets a lot deeper when you're trying to automatically sell technology products or e-commerce products. But in dental, the simplicity of it is in step 4 is ascension, or basically trying to generate that excitement, right, prior to the patient coming in, right? So the dentist needs to do that through sending out different, email automation series that help move the patient along the natural decision cycle they're already going to be moving through anyways, right, Howard? No matter what, you get the exact, how long you been, doing dentistry, right? What's
31 years.
Right. So, imagine the amount of questions that you've gotten that have been the exact same throughout that amount of time. What would you say if you boiled all those questions down? How many questions would you say actually, out of all those questions that are asked? It's like a football game, right? It's only really plays for like 13 minutes, I think, total, right? How many questions really do you get overall if you condense all those down that are actually consistent?
Not many. What would you say it is?
I would say probably 13 to 15 questions, right? To be honest, maximum.
Now, are those questions on your website?
Those questions are actually, you can see them in some of the forms that we ask them to submit automatically, right? So what dentists don't realize is that, let's just say business owners, we'll take a little bit higher. What a lot of people don't realize is that you can get as much information from that person who's interested in your service if you just ask them. You just got to ask the questions, right? And so if people don't actually ask the question, they're not going to get the answer to it. So what we aim to do is we actually aim to, ask those questions, right? And actually basically, put them through a sequence where they're actually comfortable enough asking those questions, right? So some of the questions that we'll ask, on the form is, first of all, what dental problems are you currently experiencing, right? And it's kind of a simple, silly question. But, in that specific area right there, because you're asking people to talk about themselves, right? we see in the metrics, generally people spend between 7 and 9 minutes. So on average, the form fill takes out about, if the person writes, 2 or 3 paragraphs, on average, it takes about 14 or 15 minutes for them to fill out that form. And what they're doing is they're thinking about exactly what they want to tell that dentist in order to get that consultation. We've already generated the excitement for them to fill out that form. So they're doing it via some mobile device on the bus, and they've decided to take action, right? And they're filling out this form. And so it's what that, what do you experience? Well, I can't smile. I'm turning, away in pictures because I can't smile in pictures. And so, all right. So what's the most important factor in choosing this dentist? Well, we never get cost, right? Cost is never the first thing that they say, right? It's not the first thing on their mind. It's empathy, it's reputation, it's knowledge, right? So again, dentists have to understand, and business owners have to understand how to exude the empathy, reputation, and knowledge, right, prior to making that decision cycle or getting into that decision cycle, right? And so this is hugely, hugely important, right? And actually in that decision making cycle, or in those questions, as you can see from the forms right now, they'll just spend, someone's spending almost 15 to 17 minutes answering those questions, right? So I mean, you just have to give them the opportunity to answer those questions. So that's essentially what a funnel is. Now, we get into a little bit more, especially when dentists get into phase 2, they like to try and figure out how they can get advertising dollars for free, right? How is it that we can, do free stuff, or we call liquidate the front end of your ad funnel, right? And the way we do this and neutralize people's ad spend is, you can essentially offer a product that's a lower transactional value that people will buy automatically in order to fund your ad spend, knowing that you have a higher margin service to take them to in step 3 and 4 that we just talked about, right? And so in dentist case, it's, well, why aren't you giving away or selling your teeth whitening gift cards, right? And so on. What gift card claim rates are, and so on and so forth, or different types of services that are lower margin that you can sell transactionally, where during Christmas people will find them off Facebook like crazy and sharing them, moms and dads, wherever it is. So they buy that, okay, and basically you've now essentially been able to send traffic to something that someone buys from you at step 1, right? And it funds your marketing in steps 3 and 4. So you'll essentially spend $500 a day on marketing. Let's just say $1,000 a day on marketing for pure just ad sake or math sake, right? And out of that $1,000 a day, you were selling $100 teeth whitenings, right? Just for instance, and you knew that 20% of those would likely not be claimed. 20% of those were only going to be claimed, right? As a dentist, the rest of them were just going to be claimed at some point, or they were just going to come in because they had that credit and get something else. Right? And so at the end of the day, you sold 10 of those at $100. Now, most dentists that are implementing this system are selling 20 or 30 of those, right, at the $100 level. Now you've just tripled your ad spend. So you can take $1,000 a day, know that you'll make the first, 10 up in $100 times 10, right? You made up your $1,000 in your ad spend right there. And then you take the next $2,000 in ad spend and you dedicate it to content growing for, further growing your funnel, right? Because the more you're willing to invest in eyeballs to your page, the more patients you're going to acquire, right? It's a simple difference between, people like Amazon and anybody else, right? Is Amazon was willing to spend, in the early days, actually, they did it via affiliates, right? They were able to sort of, go out and spend a massive amount of their profit on just having people write about their products, right? Just go out and just physically blog about it, and then they just give them a percentage of it. And so they're much lower in their margins, but they're able to get millions of people actually writing about this, right? And it's pure free marketing for them. So in dentistry, it's just they can't be Amazon, and that's what they're trying to do. They're all trying to get like this free bunch of like marketing and compete with a bunch of other people who are trying to get free marketing. And we talk like a lot of guys like Jay, talk about search results and ranking and so on and so forth, right? And what when dentists are looking at that and they're saying, I got 10 spots I got to compete for this major term Invisalign, right? And and there's like 80 of us just in this one little proximity. How am I going to compete for that? What am I going to do when they actually get to my site, right? And so that's the biggest thing is how do you take your high margin services and automate the lower ends of them so that you can lead to and neutralize your ad spend. And so that's kind of a little bit more of an advanced funnel that we talk about in kind of, different episodes and so on and so forth. But that's the core element of a, right? Being able to automate those very early stages of your sales cycle and being able to automate, the whole, the completely, the cold eyeball to outcome, which is what you need.
So is outcome number 4? Number 1 was the lead magnet. Number 2 was the micro commitment or tripwire. Number 3 was the consultation. And what was 4?
So 4 is what we call, again, creating that excitement and that energy when they come into the practice, right? So that's when you're selling them something. That's the conversion aspect of it, right? Is how are you converting them from that inquiry in that step 3, right, which was the lead that you needed, into an actual conversion. And that's really where the rubber hits the road, right? That's where the money's made. It's in that conversion, right? What's the offer? Are you showing them the outcome of what they could, potentially look like during that sales process? Or are they just coming in, they thought they were going to meet with the dentist that they've been, pre-framed in order to, and their expectations have been set, in the first 3 steps, and they've made it in there. And, in that step 4, dentist is on vacation, right? And they're dealing with a treatment coordinator, and the treatment coordinator is like, well, great, here's your coffee. And, and it's great that you're experiencing this, and dentists will be back in 3 weeks. Do you want to come back and see them then? There's some practices where they don't understand, like patients will drive like 45 minutes to an hour just to see them, right? It's just, so the person's driving 45 minutes to an hour to see them. You need to take advantage of that conversion in that step 4. And you need to sort of remove all the risk that goes into, the sales process to begin with, right? So what's the biggest risk to any practice, right? What's the biggest risk to a patient that takes them, from when a patient calls into that practice? Well, the first thing that they do when they call in that practice, what's the biggest risk to the dentist, right? It's the staff not being able to, understand how to deal with that particular patient or turning that patient off, right? So good staff are obviously the most critical component. Everyone, we hear a lot about that on the podcast. We talk about that a lot, right? It's good staff, and there's a lot of great staff out there. But, you haven't heard, and you've heard them, Howard, call recordings that I have to hear as part of these funnels, and when people actually call into the practice, can be absolutely, they're staggering, right? I know one good friend of ours, he crawled into a room for 3 days, and he just went to bed for 3 days when he heard the recordings. He just couldn't come out. Did not come out until he had a plan for these people. You know what I mean?
So what is your name of your podcast? The Smiling Dentist Series?
Oh, pardon me, Howard. Sorry, I didn't get that one.
What's the name of your podcast?
So right now it's That Smiling Dentist Show. Right? It's the That Smiling Dentist Show, and we're working on another one. We haven't actually named it yet, Howard. We're looking for a good name, but it's really, again, getting a little bit deeper into how dentists can integrate technology, the different types of technology that's out there. So That Smiling Dentist is showing them, teaching them funnels and automating sales processes in their time, and then, the future podcast, that in That Smiling Dentist Show, and then the future podcast will be helping them sort of integrate technology and so on and so forth. So.
The father of let's see, David Ogilvy. So the father of advertising, like G.V. Black is the father of dentistry in America. Pierre Fauchard's probably the father of dentistry for the globe. But for advertising, it was a British man. It was named David Ogilvy. And he lived from 1911 to 1999, a British advertising executive. He was a genius, and I love his quotes. Where's David Ogilvy quotes? The consumer isn't a moron. She's your wife. In the modern world of business, it is useless to be a creative, original thinker unless you can also sell what you create.
Right.
A good advertisement is one which sells the product without drawing attention to itself. But I like my favorite quote, and my next question is that when he says, "Never stop testing, and your advertising will never stop improving." And
Yep.
the dentist has all these gut feelings of what she thinks is a great marketing campaign, but she never has any data.
Right.
I think the worst job in the world that I would never do is what you do. Because if some dentist gives you a bunch of money, you could take their monthly incoming traffic from a
Yeah.
hundred calls to 1,000, and they'd never know it because they don't know
Right.
how many incoming calls there. They have no metrics. You ask any dentist. This is almost the end of after the end of the year. You say, how many incoming calls did you have in your office? No idea. How many of them went to
Nope.
voicemail? No idea. How many went to voicemail and no one even checked the voicemail? No idea.
No.
They say, oh, I did this postcard campaign. I went to dentalpostcards.com and I gave a bunch of money. I don't think it did anything. I say, well, what month did you do it in? Let's say last month. I say, well, what was last month's incoming calls versus the month before? Oh, I don't know. How many people landed on your website that month versus the month before? I don't know. So they just don't track anything. And so so how do you, so let's talk about tracking. What advice would you give to these young guys? And I was having dinner with an attorney, one of the biggest attorney advertisings in the Phoenix Valley. And I was asking him, I said, your television ad I always see has the same number. Your billboard has the same number. The back of the phone book has the same number. How do you know if that's coming from the phone book, your billboards, or your TV or your radio? Well, I don't know. Well, why don't you use four different numbers? Well, that's
Right.
our number. So I don't care if you're a dentist, a physician, a lawyer, even a politician. They just they don't track. What tracking services do you help Doc with so she knows? Because all you got to do is, I mean, it's so easy. You just get to a common denominator of dollars per head. I mean, my gosh, if you're using a phone book and it costs $500 to get a new patient, and you're doing a Google AdWord and it costs you $100 to do, then just quit doing the damn phone book. Take that money, put it in Google AdWords, and that's all marketing is. It's just tracking. It's tracking,
Right.
tracking. And Go also says something that I like. The best ideas come as jokes. Make your thinking as funny as possible. Hire people who are better than you are. Then leave them to get on with it. Look for people who will aim for the remarkable, who will not settle for the routine. And the dentist is always has a bias that, well, I went to dental school, so the best person to write a dental ad would obviously have to be me because I'm a doctor of everything. And they're not humble enough to say, hey, maybe Shamil can do it better.
Right.
And just because you don't think a joke is funny, maybe everyone else thinks it's funny. So talk about tracking so she knows, because the number one bias you go through life with is your own thoughts and beliefs. So if you're
Right.
going to be a dentist and you say, I don't like this, and that, but you're in San Antonio, Texas, and that's what the market wants, well, you're going to be shit out of luck. I mean,
Yeah. So,
so talk about tracking.
yeah. So actually, I actually take that concept one step further. Actually, is not only are they buying sort of humor and jokes and fun, but they're also buying stories, right? So stories is probably the most important component of absolutely anything, right? And so, speaking of stories, and tracking, right, is a very good client, 9 practices in one of the highest, most competitive markets in the world, smallest Singapore, most expensive places to live in the world, right? And he spends close to $120,000 to $130,000, okay, in Google search, just click marketing. His average cost per click when we kind of met him and we were looking at his kind of metrics, they were about $8 per click, right? And just to give you an example,
This 120,000 to 150,000 a year or a month?
no, this is a month, Howard. This is
a dentist?
a dentist across 9 practices, right, was spending in just Google and Singapore dollars, right? His ad spend was close to $120,000 a month. All right, so he understood the value. He understands the value of investing in advertising to acquire a client, right? That's not his issue. His issue is understanding how to measure exactly where his conversions were coming from for that $120,000 in ad spend across his 9 practices, right? Because the outcome for him is, dentists will leave if they don't have enough cases to work on, right? It's too competitive there. There's too many people out there. There's too many practices out there. There's too many places they can go work, right? And so at the end of the day, there's so much dental tourism coming into that country, right? And so for him, when he was spending that kind of money,
This sounds like dental. Was it Q&M Dental?
no. This is actually, yeah, this is another dentist, but it's one of their major competitors actually. Yeah, it's his major. And so, with him spending that kind of money across 9 practices and not actually understanding where his conversions are coming from, right? So, and Howard, it's very easy, right? You go into the back end, especially with Google Ads, right? And they set it up for you. It's Google Analytics, right? So you just go in. It's very simple. It's not, and there's a bunch of metrics there. And there's one tab, but you have to actually add a particular tracker to what you're tracking. Otherwise, they don't know what you're tracking, right? So the whole point is well, what are you actually tracking? Are you tracking phone calls? Are you tracking conversions to a guide download? Are you tracking conversions to an appointment booking? No clue. All they know is their phone's ringing if they spend more money on Google Ads, right? They just correlate the two. It's like this magical thing, right? It's like, oh, if I just spend money in ads, I'm going to magically just generate new patients. I'm going to get magically. Now, it doesn't work like that for a lot of people, right? Unfortunately, right? So, I mean, like in a lot of markets, in Singapore, it could be a little bit different. You just have to kind of be at the top because people are lazy. People would, in most markets, are lazy and they'll just choose the first thing, right? And Google does a very good job now of kind of hiding their ad at the very top to kind of be that first click, right? So you have to own many different sort of sides and many different parts of that page, of that decision-making process and that behavioral process. And so what we talk about when it comes to metrics is your invisible revenue, right? So where is the invisible revenue lost? And the foundations of all the metrics start with gathering where all those metrics are in the first place, right? And so in your Google sort of world and your website, it's always, the analytics dashboard and so on, the free tools that they give away that track all this. But in the funnel, it's much different, right? Because you're measuring what your earnings per click are as opposed to just spending cost per click. And so the difference between the two, when dentists and people shift their mindset from saying, I'm going to spend in cost per click, and I'm going to start figuring out what my earnings per click are, right? It becomes a lot different of a process that they're going through when figuring out what step 1, step 2, and step 3 are, okay? So in the metrics, for instance, for funnel, right, it's being able to say, okay, in the Google display ad network or any sort of, we talked about it earlier, kind of that picture or that video that pops up in someone's newsfeed, right? As soon as they have, that step 1 taken care of, right, and they've clicked on that, like step 1, right, we're able to measure, well, did they click on the green button or the blue button, right? We're going to split test that. Blue button, in medical, it's always medical blue, right? In dentistry, like if you ran a page, if any dentists out there that have like a red website, get rid of it. You have to just change that to blue because you're losing like 70% of your conversions, right? We split tested this in the first step of the funnel and across many steps, and the most major metric that we look at, number 1, is what are they clicking on? Like, why are they clicking on something? Is it the headline? We see it every day, right? There's clickbait all the time, and people are scrolling through news feeds and they're clicking on stuff that due to a headline, right? And so it's the same thing with the button on the website. Why are they clicking on that button on the website? And is there a button there in the first place for them to be able to click on, for you to be able to track, right? Is it there? So number 1, and that first metric is understanding what they're clicking on and what, is it the color that's affecting? Is it the, is it the wording that's affecting? Is it a specific word? If you look at, there's a study done, this was a professor at some university, in the southern U.S. ran this. I can't remember what university it was, but it's a brilliant story. Actually, Russell Brunson tells this story really well. It's an absolutely captivating way of understanding split tests and what affects human behavior and not, and the value of what we call setting expectations and pre-frames in metrics, right? And so what this university professor did was, prior to the year starting, he sent out a bio of himself to half of his students, and another half of his students received a bio that had 1 sentence difference, right? And that 1 sentence difference was designed to give a negative outlook of the professor, and without that sentence, they would have had a positive outlook of the professor, right? And so this class got this, and they read this bio, and after the first, so they came in for their lecture, and after the first lecture, they sent out a survey, okay, to track these students, and they asked them, after this lecture, do you have a positive outlook or a negative outlook of this professor? And of course, the folks who had a negative outlook of the professor going into the lecture prior to ever having meeting him had a negative outlook coming out of the lecture, right? And those that had a positive outlook of him obviously had a positive outlook leaving the lecture, right? If they actually paid attention, right? If anyone actually paid attention in that first lecture, right? But the point is that, pre-framing in metrics is so important, right? What is the person actually clicking on, and what headline are you using to attention grab them, first of all? And there's tons of tools out there that allow you to track that metric, right? And so one of the major landing page tools that we use, is actually ClickFunnels, right? So ClickFunnels is one of our biggest, that's how we build a lot of our funnels. We have several other variants of funnels that are built using a mashup of tools. But anyone that's just getting into funnels and just kind of wants to do it easily, we always recommend ClickFunnels. And our dentist will kind of take over some of the pages and so we'll give it to them so they can run, snore funnels and different other things like that. And so ClickFunnels is just the easiest way to do this. Now, it allows you to track absolutely every single click, every single, action that person is taking, aside from literally what they had for breakfast that morning. And if you really wanted to find out what they had for breakfast that morning, you can run a survey to them at some point in your funnel, right? And so at the end of the day, capturing those metrics at each stage is so important. Now, when people are using kind of a mashup of tools, we used to use things like Unbounce, right? Again, which captures the metric originally of what they're clicking on, why they're downloading your stuff and what information they want originally. And then there's form capture tools like, say, Wufoo, right, which is a subsidiary of SurveyMonkey. I think SurveyMonkey acquired them a while ago. And Wufoo allows you to measure the metrics of the amount of people, the cold eyeballs, right, that you've been generating to actual form fills, right? So the way this metric works, Howard, and the way all metrics should be worked and all metrics should be measured, right, is from how many people did you generate awareness from in step one, right, which was your lead magnet. Okay, so I'm aware of you now. That was generally in like Google's world, right? Most people can get hundreds of thousands of impressions in just a few days, right? And so they'll get hundreds of thousands of impressions in that display funnel. So hundreds of thousands of people saw and were aware of that dentist at some point, or aware of that brand and that service, right? Out of those 100,000 people, the 80-20 rule always applies. Right? You hear a lot of people talk about 80-20 applies to pretty much almost anything, as we all know, right? And so 20% of those people, right, who land on your landing page, who actually physically took the action to click and download the guide, said download the guide now. So if you clicked on that page and you didn't want to download the guide, that's on us, right? There's gonna be a certain percentage of people who are just click happy, but that's on us, right? That's on people that it's on the dentist or whoever that's doing that landing page for them not to be able to take action when they get there. But they're physically clicking that. There's only going to be a small percentage that do that. So you measure that metric, right? You use one of these tools to measure that metric. Then you measure the metric from them clicking that physical button, right, in that second step and downloading something, right? So hey, they downloaded the guide. What do they do next? Well, they move from the guide to the actual input form, right? Then they move from the input form to inside the practice. And the metric there can be measured in a number of ways because that's where the human element is introduced, right? It's where you're kind of marrying the online element and the sales and marketing element with just raw human mistakes, right? Raw human daily kind of, bullshit that people have to go through, right? On a daily basis with their lives and their jobs and whatever. So there's all these different factors that affect that. But the way you track that internally in the practice is you have to use a CRM system to manage the pre-patient cycle. And so what dentists don't do enough of, they don't manage the pre-patient cycle, they manage their post-patient cycle. Right, so it's great. Like they can onboard patients, they can get patients in the door, right? And that patient comes in and they leave, and they have no idea what happened. Most of them are tracking them on Excel spreadsheets, right, Howard? It's an Excel spreadsheet. This one dentist, we were dealing with about a year and a half ago in the UK, and right there was 5 practices, and they generated 2,000 leads, 2,500 leads, and their folks are tracking it via an Excel spreadsheet, right? It's like they're calling. Well, how do you know when to follow up with this patient? How do you know what that patient's dog's name was, right? I mean, there's tools out there now that you can just put on your smartphone and just basically sit there when you're with a patient and write some of this information down or take post-patient notes. The value behind tracking your pre-patient cycle into your post-patient cycle has already been defined by pretty much every other industry out there. Healthcare is always the last to follow, right? Unfortunately, healthcare is always kind of, banking and finance and technology companies are always kind of the first adopters of everything. And healthcare is normally, generally in a lot of cases, the last adopter of a lot of it, right?
Healthcare and government.
Healthcare and government. Yeah, well, let's not leave the government out of there. Right.
I can't believe it. For these people who think the government solution, 911 just added a texting ability to them, and it's been out for half a century. I'm like, the few times I've called 911, they're like, well, can you give a description of the car that's wrecked? Yeah. It's like, dude, I can FaceTime my 80-year-old mother. Why can't I not just FaceTime you and show you the damn car wreck? They're asking you a description. Well, what is the person wearing? It's like, God, the government is dead last. So yes. The only people dumber than healthcare are the government, which is so funny because when I talk to all my dentist homies, what do they can't stand the most? The government. Right. They think the government is incompetent, but you only see lines in healthcare and government. If you have to wait for something, it's for a dental appointment or to get your driver's license. You never have to wait for a pizza. You never have to wait for anything unless the government or healthcare is involved. And so I like to always stick that in dentist's butt that the only people as stupid as them is the government, because I know my homies do not like the government, especially in these strange times.
Yeah, we Canadians are watching. We're that apartment over, as Robin Williams said, the really big meth lab that's about to blow up, right? So
yeah, I've always seen you guys as the guys living up in the loft doing their homework, looking down at all their drunken fraternity classmates who are going to flunk out of the test the next day. I want to read you another David Ogilvy quote that I love, and remember, this is the father of advertising. This is as smart as a man can get. And he says, here, let me, I want to get it right. He says, oh, I had it right here, and now I don't know where it is.
This one.
But anyway, it was basically says that the worst ads are the ones that use pretentious jargon. And he was just so a stickler on say it as simply as possible. And it's a dentist who says, well, you have an interproximal lesion, you're going to need an MOD composite, and they just use terms. What I like to do with dentists is you take an iPhone and you hit record, and you record their treatment plan presentation. Then you print it out, and you give them a copy, and then you give them another printout, and you just take a big black magic marker and just black out every single word that nobody would know what it meant. And I see that the most common, just little things. I just see it every day. Like you have, you just always see people stumble the most. Grandma asks a simple question, well, how much is it? And the next thing you know, this guy's explained like 4 different prices, but he doesn't know, because you want to clean your tile first and seal it, but then after it's cleaned, and then if it's not come to light, then we might want to go back and polish it, but then we could buff it. And I'm sitting there listening to this guy like, dude, I have 9 years of college, and I have no idea what you're talking about. And Warren Buffett said it the best. If you can't explain to me your business on a 5x7 index card, on what your value is, what you do, and how you make money on a 5x7 card, I'm running. I'm running. And these dentists, they don't measure their treatment plan presentation. They don't know what their conversion rate is. And then the other problem with the industry is it's a hard number to track, because what if you recommend bleaching and Invisalign on just every patient that could benefit even a little from bleaching Invisalign? Well, then how do you compare apples to apples instead of apples to oranges on treatment plan conversion. I mean, they don't know how many people land on their website. They have no idea how many call. They can't even tell you how many people last month left a message on voicemail that your staff didn't even bother to check.
Turn
So,
off.
so you're basically, whenever you're talking to a dentist about the business of dentistry, you're dealing with somewhere between Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles.
Yeah.
Either blind or dead.
Yes.
And then all you're going to listen to is everything he wants to believe. You know what I mean? That if you build it, they will come. It's all word of mouth referral. If you just take the longest and do the best occlusion, there'll be a liner on your door, and you're like, all right, just believe it. So how do you convert that guy? How do you convert that guy to start? And they'll even tell you, this is what I don't understand. This is why I would never do your job. Is they say, dude, I hate selling. I didn't go to 8 years of college to sell. I don't want to sell. And it's and I don't believe that, because there are women in the United States and Canada who, after they lost all their teeth and got a denture, killed themselves.
Right.
I mean, I go up to any woman, and when I'm lecturing, I'll go to a woman and I'll say, how much money would I have to give you to pull your front tooth, and you could never, ever replace that front tooth the rest of your life? And they go, never. And I said, well, obviously you do it for $100,000. Like, are you out of your mind? I said, what about $1 million? I mean, when you're selling something that people wouldn't take $1 million to lose their front tooth, then you don't believe in your product. And it's like, dude, you know, I always want to tell everybody, if you don't believe in selling dentistry, I think you should get out of dentistry and go into something you can sell. I mean, if the only thing you believe in is iPhones and Tesla cars, then quit dentistry and go sell cars for Tesla. Because man, when people won't take $1 million for their own front tooth and they kill themselves, I mean, and another difference, a huge difference between men and women, is by age 40, almost every single woman says she's had at least one nightmare of losing her teeth in her dream.
The teeth, yeah.
And with men, it's only like 10 or 20% by age 40. So women do not want to lose their teeth. They wouldn't take $1 million in exchange for their teeth. And then I'm talking to some stupid dentist that, well, I don't like to sell dentistry. Then get out. Go into something you like to sell. Go find something you're motivated about. Because if you don't get excited about making your teeth whiter, brighter, sexier, straighter, Invisalign, bleaching, bonding, health, and dying with all your teeth, then I feel sorry for you. And you need to go find something that flips your flipper.
100%. Yeah.
So how do you, when you take those guys on as clients, how do you convert them to want to track stuff and present treatment and sell and convert and get the whole team involved in conversion? Because what I see in dentistry, the only ones who really get it are orthodontists, because if the average new patient in dentistry for the United States of America, and I don't care what you think yours is or whatever, but for the country as a whole, the data by PhD economists like Marco Vilacek, it's about $400. But for an orthodontist, it's like $6,500. So when I tell you you need to have a cavity filled and you leave, the dentist doesn't even register. But if you come in with your daughter and I do a whole consultation on braces for your daughter and you leave, I know $6,500 just walked out the door. So the only people that I see routinely in dentistry that get it, track it, know it, I mean, you don't have to tell them. It's the 10,800 orthodontists in America who work more than 32 hours a week. But my God, my homies listen to this right now. The general dentist, they just they have no idea. They don't try. So how do you, if they call you up and they become a client, how do you convert them to think, to act and think like this and take it serious?
Well, that's a great question. It's actually a lot of times. So our particular funnel is built when they're absolutely at their wits' end with that in the first place. So to be honest, you can never convince these folks to make that change if you're proactively just walking up to them on the street and saying, you need to make a change in your dental practice. I know that 80% of dental practices suck, and you're probably getting 93% of your referrals from word of mouth. And your sales process is this, because when you talk to dentists, right, they'll say, oh, my conversion rates are 75%. We're amazing. My staff's this, my staff's that. The reality is they aren't, right? And so the point is that you have to shift the mindset into again, doing things that have already been adopted by other industries years ago, right? And one of the biggest things was in tech, right? Startups for tech is creating a culture of inclusiveness, right, within the practice. And I don't mean all lovey-dovey and getting all the blankets. I'm talking about making sure that when that dentist comes in and they sell that $45,000 procedure in Manhattan, right? There's an actual like full restorative case that came in. A $45,000 procedure has just been sold, right? And the dentist is on the whiteboard and they're like, "Oh, this is amazing," and the associate is helping. This is what we're going to make on this procedure or whatever. And this is kind of like, now I can kind of go and do something that I wanted to do this summer or whatever, right? The receptionist, the treatment coordinator, the hygienist, every single person that was involved, the assistant, the associate that was involved in that process did not even make close to what the dentist did off of that procedure, right? And so there has to be a culture of incentives developed. And I mean, again, we've got lots of stories about practice.
Well, I want to stop you one thing, because you said Manhattan, and I really want to stop you there, because when I travel around the world, when everybody says, "Oh yeah, I've been to America," I always stop and say, "Oh, don't tell me it was what did you say?" Because I know it's only Manhattan. They went to the Greater New York Dental Meeting one time, and they think the United States of America is Manhattan, which is some freak outlier. And when I look at these dentists out there, the average American will buy 13 new cars in their lifetime. 13. And the median average price of that car is $33,000. So then when I go look at the dentist,
Right.
95% will never sell one $33,000 case in their whole life. But within every single city and zip code, there's a dentist who only schedules patients Monday through Thursday, because Friday is that big case day. And they do 30, 40, 50 cases a year. Every Friday, they got a 20, 30, 40, $50,000 course. It's either all on four. It's either we're taking every amalgam, everything out, redoing it. They have endodontists that come from the next county because she needs like 3 molar root canals, and he can't. So, and he'll have an anesthesia. So I'm sitting there in every single town. When you say Manhattan, they think, "Oh, well, you don't understand, dude. I'm in Parsons, Kansas." Yeah, well, in Parsons, Kansas, they sell $50,000 F-150 pickup trucks every single day. And some people get the $90,000 F-250 truck. So in every one of those poor flyover states that only sells small grains, wheat, corn, Milo, they're buying 50,000 to 100,000 trucks. And that's why I love Care Credit the most. I have no financial connection to these guys. I don't even know if they advertise with us or not. That if you're on Care Credit, the local rep can come by and tell you how much financing all the dentists in your zip code or county or city are doing. And every time some dentist starts telling me a big story about, "You just don't understand, the economy in Childers, Texas, it died, we're dead," and then you pull up Care Credit, it's like, really? Wow, so that dentist only half a mile from your office last year did $700,000 of financing, and you didn't do 7,000, and you think it's always everybody's problem but the man in the mirror. It's never that they don't track, they don't convert, they don't have an office of sales, and then he tells you at the end, "Oh, I don't want to sell." Well, you're doing a damn good job. You've met all your goals. You said you don't want to sell, and you don't. Congratulations, you met all your goals.
Keep not selling.
Yeah, so your attitude determines your altitude. So you're saying that rock bottom is the best foundation, and the guys calling you have already realized, "I got a problem. It's not getting better." So you're saying the people that call you, they're already past that. And the best foundation is rock bottom. When you're tired of having the same sales year after year after year, you go and look at a dental office, like, okay, you've collected $750,000 a year and taken home 175, which is the median mean mode average in American dentists, general dentistry, for 10 years. And the guy across the street from you is doubling that. He's doing $1.5 million. He's taking home 350 in the same shithole city that you live in.
Right.
So are you ready to listen? How long do they have to flatline before they're ready to listen?
That's the thing, right? Is like, I mean, at the end of the day, that's why the funnel's developed to begin with, right? Is so that you only attract people who are at that aware. And it's the same thing with patients. right? So exactly what you just said, where it's like they're just flatline, they're done, they're stagnant. It's like they're tired of doing the exact same thing with the patient, right? That patient's been working for the last 20 years. They've been wearing dentures. They haven't been able to eat an apple. They can't eat corn on the cob. Everything sucks. They're just done with it, but they've just managed to squeak down enough money to be able to kind of put a little down payment on it, and their credit's good enough where they have a good enough job and pension where they can pay a monthly fee to basically enjoy the last 20 years of their life, right? Or 25 years of their life eating apples, right? And that's essentially the core component of that funnel, is attracting. And same with dentists need to attract patients who are at that, be able to separate the research phase from I'm kind of ready now. You don't have a choice. Like, there's too many people out there that require help, right? You can't help them all. So you need to figure out, well, who is at the research phase now versus who is kind of willing to help themselves. And if they're already spending money, they've spent money on that. Like, our ideal client, like, we have a buyer profile, and every single dentist should have a patient profile on who they want to sell as a patient. So you're talking earlier, and your thoughts earlier completely echo the tests that we've ran versus male versus female. Two very different markets. In fact, in some markets, we don't even pitch to males because we don't care. Like, to be honest, like, I played hockey and soccer all my life. I grew up I'm a Canadian kid that grew up playing hockey and soccer. And, during a slide tackle, they took out my 2 front teeth or whatever. And then, my bottom tooth's an implant, my top 2 teeth are crown and veneer. And I'm like 43 years old. This happened like 20 years ago, right? 22 years ago. Now, I left my left tooth out primarily because I thought it was cool. I'm like, I'm missing a tooth, and I got it knocked out in the game. It was a great story, and I told everybody I went up for a header, and the guys, caught me under the chin. But that wasn't what it was about, right? What happened to me was my teeth started to shift, right? And my dentist goes, it's all well and good, you're being Mr. Cool Guy, but now you're 23 years old. Look at your teeth; they're starting to show. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do something about this right away. What am I going to do? I had to come up with the money within. Now I know it sounds like forever, but it's like 20 years ago. Right, my guy had sent me to a referral to the next person, right? Who then value's already there for me. I'm gonna trust Painless Pete. That's what we called him, right? Painless Pete, right? Dr. Brett, and his bucket list was to leave early, retire at 52, and go ride his motorcycle all over the country, right? And he did that. But he would refer us to somebody else. All he did was general and cosmetic. That's it. Refer to somebody else who basically drilled, the abutment in my jaw, and then basically the next person who screwed the implant in, right, and actually did the implant. So there's like 3 dentists involved in that process, right? Everyone's bringing it in house now. There's no question that if you want to make money in dentistry, you've got to start bringing those services in house. So it's really about separating. You cannot help everybody. You've got to separate people that are researching to buy that implant versus the people who are ready to buy now, and focus on the ones, instead of like driving in a smattering of people that are anywhere from, free whitening to all on 4, right? Only focus on the all on 4. So if you focus all your advertising efforts on people who are just looking for all on 4, they're female, as we talked about earlier, who really are the ones who are actually taking advantage of, the ad. Most clicks come from that demographic, primarily because, again, they're looking, to if you pull out a tooth, it's going to cost, they would not pull it out for $1 million, right? So replacing dentures is very important. So the sales cycle on that is much quicker if you're able to develop empathy, trust, and that reputation prior to them actually being able to make that decision, right? So to answer your question,
we went well over an hour. I just want to end and just say a couple things, because some of my homies, I know what they thinking now, and I've been talking to them for 31 years. A lot of them are saying, well, dude, I don't do implants, and I know that those are the big cases. The big cases are dental implant cases, but I just don't do them. Well, you don't have to do them.
No,
I can't tell you how many dentists will say you're in Phoenix. Well, you just go down to Tucson or up north to Flagstaff and start talking to the periodontist and oral surgeons there, and,
right.
And you'll find out that a good 25% of them would love to come down one day a month and do the implants in your office, where you split it, the revenue 50-50. It's the same thing, but the people who are bringing the services in half doesn't mean the dentist. I mean, a dentist can't master Invisalign and implants and molar endo and silver diamine fluoride pediatric dentistry and bleaching. And I mean, there's just, you could do it 100 years ago, but you can't do it today.
No, they need to master automation.
You need to master a couple things. And when a doctor tells me, Well, I'm gonna go learn sleep apnea. I'm like, wow, sleep apnea. Just that alone, just to stay up on sleep apnea alone would be a major commitment. So what are you giving up? Are you giving up endo or perio or implants? I mean, look at implants. Hell, just bone grafting could be especially. So what are you going to give up? They go, oh, I'm giving up nothing. I'm just going to be a jack of all trades. I'm like, man, the money, like I look at people who decide they want to place implants. And by the time they go to these courses and fly to Dominican Republic and buy the equipment. I mean, they'll have, and then they buy a CBCT. They might have spent $250,000 before they brought in $1 revenue. Right. Then there's that little business girl across the street. She says, yeah, I'm in Phoenix and I'm on the west side of town and an hour away on the east side of town. I found a periodontist. So I'm going to load up all my cases. I'm going to spend all the money that I would have spent in an implant training and all this crap. I'm going to spend that on a website and marketing, and I'm going to convert these people. I'm going to load them all up, and then the lady periodontist from the other side of town is going to come in every other Friday and do all the placement for me. I mean, it's a business, and I'll end it on this because we're way over time. Is that, look, man, Ray Kroc is dead. He's dead. He's 6 feet underground, and 40,000 McDonald's get up every day and make a Big Mac. Sam Walton is dead, and they build 40 new Walmarts a month. Dude, the business is business is business. So get the business down. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Get processes down, automate, process, automate, delegate, develop processes, predictable and measurable processes, and you'll get consistent results.
So say that again,
automate, delegate, so you can get more predictable, consistent results, right? That's it. Automate, delegate, develop processes, and that gets you more consistent results, period, all the time. That is the only way to do it, and that's life.
So you said automate, delegate. I want to stop you right there at delegate. I mean, these dentists, they won't delegate, and I keep telling the dentist, you're going to die.
Yeah.
I mean, what if Sam Walton didn't delegate, and when he died, there was no Walmart? What if Steve Jobs didn't delegate, when he died, there was no iPhone? I mean, how can you not delegate unless you're going to live forever? And I tell dentists every year they should plan on working one less hour a week and taking home one more dollar. Because if you're not working less hours for more money, then I already know what your problem is. I mean, I know dentists who, I mean, look at Rick Workman. The guy owns 850 dental offices, and he hasn't seen a patient in 2 decades.
Well, Howard, I mean, how do people, so remember, we talked about this a while back too. We've had this conversation. It's like people spend like 30% of their initial life just training and learning to work. Then they spend like the next 35, 40 years of their life just working their butt off, right? To what? Enjoy like 10 years of like 15 years of life, right? If you don't get hit by a bus in between then, right? So the point is like, in order to live that semi-retired life, they got to delegate. Like, you have no choice. If you're going to scale your business, you have to figure out how to delegate. And, especially when the funnel process, like when we're building funnels, right? We're delegating the sales process the dentist has to actually follow in the early stages away from the dentist, because as we were talking earlier, I mean, the dentists aren't going to put their best foot forward with these people every single time, right? You're going to just sit there explaining to me how the engine's built in the Ferrari as opposed to telling me how good I'm going to look in the Ferrari as I'm driving down the road, right? So it's like, it has nothing to do with, doing more. It has everything to do with kind of living that kind of semi-retired life that they can live way much longer before than society wants them to, right? Or society actually deems we should be, right? A lot of people just work, they know they got to work. You got to work 2 jobs, and of course you have to do that. But at the end of the day, now there is the ability, especially with being able to scale digitally and scale online and develop a lot of content at very low cost, right? For a lot of these folks, it's very easy to delegate the most important parts of your sales cycles and most important parts of your actual, if you hire an associate, delegate to them, and then develop a specific revenue stream that just develop, so that as soon as you start doing that, you are now scaling your time and actually living semi-retirement a lot earlier in your life than you should be, right? As opposed to just working that sort of constant 4 or 5 day week until you die. Right.
His website is thatsmilingdentist.com, and thank you so much for coming on the show today, buddy.
My pleasure. Thanks. It's been an honor and privilege.